Hi there, it's Pete the Hipster King from the Hairy Game Lords, and this week we've had the chance to play this, Rise of the Amazons by Alcyon Creative. So, Alcyon Creative sent this out to us, this prototype, to take a look at. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to get together to play this because of COVID lockdown. However, we were able to get to play with the designer in Tabletopia and have a look at the game there, and I've also played a solo game with this, the prototype edition. So, what did we think? Stay tuned and find out. So, Rise of the Amazons. When I first looked at the artwork, immediately I knew this looked like a brilliant game. And whenever you see a game that looks good, there's always that concern, is it going to play as well as it looks? I read the rulebook. It was a tough read. There's a lot going on in this game. And so coming into the first play of the game, I was a little bit concerned that I might feel a little bit let down from this great artwork and this rulebook that was difficult to work through. Oh my days, I could not have been so wrong. We really enjoyed playing this game. We only played it at 2-player. Dave and I played along. It's really finely balanced. It's got just the right number of rounds. There are only 3 rounds, which doesn't sound like a lot, and you almost want there to be another round, which is I love about a game. But because there is only 3 rounds, you are forced to make every single action you take count. And if you make a mistake, like I did on the very last turn, not leaving enough actions to complete what I needed to complete, you can go from victory to disaster, which is exactly what happened to me. More about that later. So, how does it play? Well, in essence, you've got the board. The board is a map, and you've got various different areas on that map. Those areas have got different things, and there are a number of different ways that you can build your points up through the game. And it's a race to get the most victory points. However, you have to watch and manage a whole load of other resources. Otherwise, you can end up losing the game on a technicality. Again, exactly what I did. You have a supply of resources, and at the start of each round, to enable you to move around the board, you need to use up some of that supply. My character started with 3. There are 3 rounds. By the end of the game, I'd got 0. At some point, I needed to stock up on my supply. And I'd left it to the last round to do that. I picked up a card that allowed me to do that. And then I only had 1 action, and I needed 2 actions to spend to do that and complete what I needed to. So, although I scored high on my victory points, didn't have the supply action left to win the game. Really frustrating, because Dave panned at collecting victory points. So how do you get the victory points? Well, the key mechanism for victory points is events. Events take the form of mythological Greek creatures and other nasties that we will meet. Anything from the Minotaur to horrendous diseases. They come in a set of different colours, and those colours correspond to tokens that are laid out randomly on the board. And as you move around the board, you have to try and overcome these events, and you can add them to your player board. And on your player board, you have a different set. Each person has got asymmetric sort of player board, and you'll have different events that you've got to collect. If you don't collect those events, there'll be minus victory points at the end of the game. So each one you covers over the potential minus victory points, which could take you from if you left them all, you'd be in a real mess in terms of victory points. So it prevents you losing victory points at the end of the game, but you also get victory points for defeating those monsters and completing those events. That's one key way of gaining victory points. Whenever you clear out the events from an area, you are left with spaces. You can then plant your flag in that specific spot on the map. You gain points for victory points for doing that, but not only do you gain points for actually laying the flag, every time one of your opponents passes through that land space, you gain victory points. That can, particularly if you're looking at 3 or 4 players, suddenly you get a spot near the centre of the map that's going to have a lot of movement over it. Really, really useful for gaining victory points throughout the game. There's a nice little mechanic about deciding turn order and gaining bonuses. There are 4 gods at the top, 4 god spaces at the top of the board. You start on a specific god who favours you at the start of the game, but you can move order if you are able to sacrifice to the gods. When you sacrifice to the gods, you're allowed to change your space and you gain a specific action related to that god. It might be a free turn, it might be another action point. So that's another way of gaining some additional victory points and gaining some extras to your turn. There are a set of cards in the deck called Divine Interventions. Really, really useful. They're kind of your bonus action cards, if you like. They'll cost 1 or 2 action points to play, but going and gaining them will give you victory points, and often they'll give you extra battle points for when you're battling events. There's lots to this game. It sounds like it's really complicated. I'd say it's midway in terms of it made sense once you started to play it, and that balance between having maybe, I think, on average 9 or 10 action points to spend, most of your actions costing 1 or 2 action points, but then if you're using additional cards you have to pay extra, so some of those battles might cost 4 or 5 action points. That's half your actions gone. Just to complete one event can be really, really difficult. Another thing that you have to do before the end of the game is complete the, and I'm going to try and pronounce it, the Amazonamaki, I think is how you pronounce it. Apologies, my Greek isn't at its best. And basically, again, using one of the supply Amazons, you need to complete this, where you have to get a specific score, I think, somewhere from 5-5 up to 6-6. And depending on which round you do that in, you'll get additional victory points. Do it in the 3rd round, get the top score, you get some really good victory points. First round, getting it out of the way quick, not as good on the victory points. But if you don't do it by the end of the game, remember you've only got 3 rounds to do this in, that's it, you lose 5 victory points. So there's a lot of times when if you don't do things, you'll lose victory points. Don't keep your supply up. At the end of the game, if your supply is 0, you cannot win, no matter what victory points you've got. Don't keep on top of those events, you'll be scoring minus victory points at the end. Each of these things kind of weighs up and balance. Which way am I going to go? Am I going to go fast after victory points, or am I going to try and cover as many of my bases to avoid losing victory points at the end? Lots to think about, lots to do, but only 3 rounds in the game. So really, really crunchy in terms of managing those resources, your actions, if you like, are your main resource. Managing those carefully so that you don't spend up and end up not being able to do the thing that you need to do to ensure the win. We had a hell of a lot of fun playing this. It was absolutely brilliant. Definitely check it out.
Hi, Dave the Grey here. Rise of the Amazons. What did I think? So, now there's only 3 turns to the game, which you might think isn't very much at all. However, there is an awful lot packed in to those 3 turns. But it's one of those sorts of games that you've never got quite enough time, action points, whatever it might be, to do everything that you feel you need to do. And there's a few things that stop you. So not having enough action points, you need to build your strength to get around a particularly powerful enemy, or your opponent just gets in your way and blocks you from going where you need to go, or steals the thing that you had your heart set on. Damn you, Pete. However, you do get some help from your friendly Amazons. I'm not going to try and pronounce their names because that would just be embarrassing for all of us, but they'll help you out fighting some of the classic monsters from Greek mythology. So you've got Cerberus, Medusa, Typhon, so on and so forth, which is really cool, and it really makes it a game that is about Greek mythology rather than just being Greek mythology pasted on to a standard board game. Really helps you be immersed in the theme of it all. Yeah, there's also each round you can get help from one of the gods if you've performed the right actions, you know, gone to the temple, done your bit, kind of thing. And every turn, one of the gods will also curse you all. So it's a global effect, can do all sorts of things. One of the particularly irritating ones, because we had it right on the last turn of the game, was that we all got less action points. Cheers for that. Yeah, we'll remember that. We will remember that, you know, when it comes to your turn for us to be on your side. Yeah, not going to happen, mate. But yeah, so all sorts of stuff going on. The game at the end was actually really close. Pete kept blocking me. Every time I wanted to go somewhere, do something, right at the end of the game, I was about to catch a boat from over there, down to over there, kill a monster, get a load of victory points, beat him, and no, he just stood in my way and I couldn't get past him. Now, he's going to try and pretend that that was all deliberate. I'm not so sure, if I'm really honest with you. I think he just blustered and blundered his way to a win, but I would say that, wouldn't I? Now, although we played it on TTS, the game does look absolutely gorgeous. Andrew wasn't there, but he would be in absolute raptures over some of the artwork. All of the characters are really, really nicely portrayed. Whole load of monsters, you know, all the classical mythology stuff is in there. And like I said before, it helps with the immersiveness of it. So, all in all, if you like a slightly different spin on the action point area control sort of a game, or you just really, really like Greek mythology, and I'll be honest, I'm a bit of both, then this, definitely a game to check out. Coming soon to Kickstarter, get it backed. Hi, Dave the Grave here. Blah, 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 blah. Hi. I can't even say it when you're not here. Maybe it is me, not you. Hi, Dave the Grey here.